Hello, it's Lion here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another book review. And in fact, today we're going to be looking at another Star Wars The High Republic book. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the last adult novel in the first phase of The High Republic, which is titled The Fallen Star by Claudia Gray. Now, I know Claudia Gray is a big Star Wars name. She's a very good author, apparently, and she has done a lot of great Star Wars stuff. I've never actually read anything by her except for this. But I understand that she is a good writer. I did see that throughout this novel. However, I'm not necessarily sure she's that great, but I don't know if that's because she's being limited by what she can do within this context. So I do want to try to read some of her other works in the Star Wars universe. So I'll probably get back to that eventually at some point. So this is the last book in phase one, or at least, well, it's actually not really the last book, but it is the last adult book in the phase, because if you guys don't know, the way it works is that there's a bunch of different levels to the story for different levels of people. So there's like middle grade stuff, there's, young readers, there's YA, and then there's adult. There's also comic books, manga, children's adventure, activity books and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff. This is the last of the adult novels, and it does kind of close out the story more or less. At least it feels like it does. So yeah, it's published by Del Rey, as you guys can see right there. And of course the demographic is adult, duh. And the genres here are of course sci fantasy, and you could even say that this has elements of horror or thriller in it, and it's pretty cool. It's actually kind of interesting how each of the adult novels are slightly different. The first one is kind of a natural disaster kind of thing, like if we're looking at it as movies, the first one is a natural disaster movie like 2012. The second one is a like an action thriller type movie, like The Gray Man or something, that's happening in a specific location, like a kind of more like a Die Hard kind of thing. And then this last one is more of a traditional, or well, not really traditional, but more kind of generic sci-fi horror movie, kind of like Alien, or that one with Ryan Reynolds. I don't remember what it's called, but basically, or like Cloverfield Paradox. It's like people are on a ship, they're trapped with an alien on the ship, and they have to survive, but a lot of them end up dying. And it's kind of like that. So I think that that's really cool. It makes the variety of the story feel interesting. It makes it really cool, but it is not necessarily that good in my opinion. But that's mostly because I don't like the structure. So yeah. It does not have an adaptation yet, although I do actually think this would do really well as a Clone Wars style TV show. And honestly, that's what they really should have done. But whatever, they do want to build up a multimedia franchise, so it's fine. And the rating for this out of the gate is 4 out of 5. I definitely think it's better than book 2, although I do think I gave that one a 4 out of 5 as well. But this is a lot better, and this is almost actually a 5 for me, where the first one is a 5, the second one was less good, significantly less good, and this one is better than the second one, so it's right below the first. And honestly, if it was a little bit different, a little bit faster, or it focused on more characters that I liked, I think I would have definitely given it a 5 out of 5. The premise is that Starlight Beacon, it's above this planet called Aram, and they're helping with this planetary desalination plant that's having issues. And as they're doing that, as they're stationed above Aram, the Nile, or specifically Martian Row, because the Nile doesn't really exist anymore, sabotage the station. And they do this in a very specific, very thought out and methodical way that actually causes the issue to not be able to be solved. And I think that's really, really well done. They also happen to bring with them these creatures that were introduced in the second novel that basically eat the force out of people. And of course, trouble is abound because of this. And it's generally pretty good. I did like that element of the story. I just think that there's other characters that could have been better utilized, like Avar Kriss. She's barely in this book, and she was the best part of all of the High Republic. She's the most interesting character out of all of them. I like Bell quite a bit as well, but that's mostly because he's so common in the story, if that makes sense. Burryuga is also interesting, but I don't really care too much about Stellan, and this is kind of like his book. So that's also another thing I noticed, is that The first book was Avar Chris's book. She is the one part of the Trinity. And then the second book was for Elzar Mann. And then this one, of course, is for Stellan Gios. The thing is that Elzar Mann and Stellan Gios are less interesting than Avar Chris. But it is kind of a standard thing. You know, Star Wars always has to have the trinity of characters, 2 male, 1 female. That's, you know, Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme in the prequels, and Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka in the Clone Wars. And then you have Luke and Han and Leia. And, of course, then now you have Avar Chris and Stellan Gios and Elzar Mann. So, yeah, it is what it is. But I do think that if Avar Chris was the main character of all of the High Republic, it would have been a lot more interesting. But that's just me. I don't know if I'm the only person that thinks that. So, yeah, let's move on to the plot line here. Basically, we start with the fact that Avar Chris is away. She's hunting down Lorna D after she finished dealing with the Drengir. And this is because Lorna D is supposed to be the leader of the Nile, but of course everyone knows that that's not true. And so she's being, you know, told to go on a wild goose chase, and no one really knows that that's the case, right? So, yeah. Then we have Stellan Gios, who is the current marshal of the Starlight Beacon. And he's kind of uppity. He's like, oh, yes, finally, I'm better than Avar Chris. Which is kind of weird. I'm not sure why he thinks that, because the whole thing is that him and Avar Chris and Elzar Mann are all, like, best friends forever. And, in fact, they're kind of more of a love triangle. And him trying to one-up her is kind of weird. Because he's already, like, up there before, because he's, like, a Jedi Council member, whereas Avar Chris is not. So I didn't really understand that bit, but it is what it is. And Martian Road has this nefarious plan, of course. He's going to send 3 different Nile operatives. I don't remember their names. They're not really important. They're just kind of like plot devices. And they've been sent to the station, to Starlight Beacon, to slowly sabotage it. They're going to be changing certain things so that it always looks like things are communicating properly. They're going to depower a lot of batteries. They're going to do all sorts of damage to the station so that when a big explosion goes off, the station gets hurt so badly that it splits apart into 2 pieces. And that is where the majority of the story really takes place, once it's split into 2, and we follow the lower portion of Starlight Beacon as everyone there tries to survive. So it's kind of interesting like that, but it is it takes too long, in my opinion, to get to this point, because this is when the story gets good, and it takes too long to build it up, but also it doesn't feel like it needed to take that long. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. There's also this very big subplot of these 2 different pilot groups that hate each other, and that doesn't really matter all that much, but they kind of play it up in the story. It does become a plot point that's relevant to everyone at the end of the novel, but for the vast majority of it, it just feels like something extra that they really didn't have anywhere else to put, so they just put it here. And I didn't really like it too much. I didn't dislike it all that much, but I didn't really enjoy it that much. I felt like there was better things to focus on. And yeah, and so Martian Row has this plan. He also brought these unknown force beasts. I don't know what they're called. I'm pretty sure they've never been called anything. At least that's what it seems like. But I don't remember if they ever did get an official name in the 3 novels that I've read. And they're actually brought in by confusing people by calling them Rathars, which are some sort of like predatory octopus thing. And the droid checks the ship, he checks the cargo and the manifest, and he's like, okay, everything works. So he ignores the fact that, you know, it's not actually correct. And then no one actually checks it physically, like a person doesn't check it. So these things get unleashed at some point. And of course, because they eat the Force, they affect the Jedi's connection with the Force. And I think this is a really good plot point. It's really interesting when characters have powers, but then their powers are taken away, so they have to develop skills or use skills that they've had before that don't really come in handy all that often to fix issues. And I really like that part of the story. I also really like that no one really knew what was happening. They just knew there was this ugly feeling in the Force, and then people started dying, and specifically only Jedi started dying. So I really liked that aspect of the story. I just feel like the people that died didn't matter to me all that much. And I'm not going to say who, because that is too much of a spoiler in my opinion. But I feel like most of them didn't really matter. Maybe one of them I kind of felt some secondhand sympathy for, mostly through the character that was reacting to their death. And the other one was like, okay, I just met them in this book. I don't care that they died. But I know that it might be important if you've read all of the High Republic. But I don't think that really works, in my opinion. Like, it is too much of an effort to ask people to read a bunch of different types of demographics, and usually because it's just they're written in such a different way that it is not appealing, right? So it's not the same thing as like watching TV shows, like Marvel TV shows and movies. It's like, yeah, they're all different genres, but the medium and the styling is all the same. That's not really the case across different mediums or like across different demographics, right? So I just was not interested in trying it. So a lot of the things that feel like they should be more impactful to me don't really come off that way. Of course, that's because I'm not engaging with it that way, but I really don't think that it should be made to force people to read all of this stuff, right? So yeah. But anyway, back to the plot line, because I keep getting sidetracked by stuff. So, yeah, it hampers the Jedi. The Starlight Beacon breaks again, and that's when the story starts properly. And then we have Bell dealing with the medical tower, or Bell Setifor, I think is the last name, dealing with the medical tower. And he gets helped by Beryuga. And then a bunch of Jedi get eaten by these Force things. Beryuga has an issue, and Elzar Mann has to kind of step up because Stalin Gios is not doing well. He's also being attacked by these Force-eating things, but in a different way from everyone else. And he's basically comatose or catatonic, more like. And so Elzar Mann has to step up. And then a lot of crazy shit happens thanks to this asshole guy called Kali Lin, who is one of the pilots in that pilot scuffle that was happening. And again, I don't really think that pilot situation really matters all that much. I would have really preferred the story focus mostly on the Jedi and not these random ass pilots that don't really matter. But that's just me. And yeah, it really felt like an alien invades a spaceship type of thing, like Alien, like Cloverfield Paradox, like that one movie with Ryan Reynolds. And it was really good. I really did enjoy it. However, there were problems with certain things. Like, I didn't really care about some of the characters that died. I didn't really care about Kali Lin and Affie, what's her name? Affie something, or Leox or Geode. And the Martian Rose situation is kind of odd because the phase ends, but there's no satisfaction for anyone. Like, Martian Rose technically achieves his goal, or at least what we think is his goal, but there's no satisfying sense of doom about the fact that the bad guy won, like there is in like one of the two big Avengers movies. I think it was Avengers Infinity War. Like, at the end of that movie, when Thanos succeeds, it's like, oh shit, what's gonna happen, right? I didn't really feel like that at this point in time. It was mostly like, oh, well, he won, but the Jedi are gonna get back up and we're gonna be better than before. And it's like, I guess, but this is supposed to be a big, important, meaningful, like, defeat. Why does it not feel like that, right? Like I don't know. I feel like it should have felt like Order 66, and it didn't feel like that at all. So I do think there's kind of a loss of feelings that I felt I was supposed to feel that I never got to, and I'm not sure why that is. So yeah, in terms of characters, there's a lot of them. Bell, Beryuga, Elzar Mann, Stellan Gios, and March and Ro are more or less the main characters, where we have Nan and Chansey, who are two ex-Nihil characters. And we have Kali Lin, Affie, Leox, and Geode. These are 4 different pilots. 3 of them work together, and Kali Lee is the bad guy. and they're fighting each other through this kind of passive aggressive kind of situation, and it culminates with Collie Lynn becoming an asshat, right? Or, well, he was already an asshole, but he becomes worse throughout the novel, and I think he eventually bites it, but again, it just wasted too much time in my opinion, so I didn't really care too much. Geode is the rock that was introduced in the early days of the High Republic when it was being announced, and everyone was crying about how it's so stupid that they had a rock as a character, and I agree, it is stupid. However, it's not as egregious as you would think. They do kind of play it off as a joke that this thing is reacting, but no one really knows how it's reacting because they can't see its face. But I think that the joke falls flat basically every time. There was never really a time when I chuckled or smirked or anything to this interaction people had with Geode, because I didn't really find it funny, but I did understand that there was an attempt to be a joke there. But I also didn't really dislike it too much. It was just like, okay, whatever, it's fine. It's not really any different from B1 battle droids being stupid or Jar Jar doing dumb shit. Like, it's just kind of how it is, and it's fine. It's not a problem. However, if like Geode was one of the main characters, I probably would dislike it. But because he's such a secondary, very non-important character, it's all right. In terms of world building, there really isn't too much going on here. There's a new planet, ARM. There's more types of Jedi. We learn about Wayseekers. Don't know what the hell they do, but they're there. That's cool. We learn about these Force beasts a little bit. And other than that, there really isn't too much else to explain there. So it's not really all that important. Now let's get on to the rating. It's a 4 out of 5, like I said. It's a lot better than book 2. It's not as good as book 1. So let me actually mention all of the stuff that I was talking about earlier during the plot line and kind of explain why I don't like this as much and why I don't necessarily think I'm going to continue reading any of the High Republic. So I really liked the first book. I thought it was really interesting that everything was like about the Jedi and stuff. There was definitely issues with it. I find the way that they use this like phrase, "We are all the Republic," in this kind of weird like fervous, like not religious but kind of almost like religious kind of vibe, where it's like this, there's this message that's being tried to like be pushed like to the real world, and it doesn't really work for me, and it just feels kind of off and kind of creepy, but it's not that big of a deal, right? I do like Avar Kriss a lot as a character, and if the story kept following her specifically, I would have really liked it, right? But I'm pretty sure she is the main character of other novels in the YA kind of side of things, but I'm not interested in reading those, so I'm not going to be able to enjoy her stories, even though I would like to. So it is what it is. The second book felt too long, in my opinion, and I also wasn't really super invested in many of the characters. I really liked Bell's struggles and his issues with his master that was dead, but not really, but also did end up dying anyways. And there was some certain parts of it that were really good. Like the beginning was awesome when we have them fighting in that like shitty planet with Porter Engel and stuff like that. I thought that was cool. And then this one also was generally cool, but there's a lot of things that are put there that I don't really care about. Like let me think of more stuff. So in the first one, I think everything is fine. In the second one, I remember the two women that had this crazy super weapon that even affects lightsabers. I don't really care about that, and it didn't go anywhere. It didn't come up in this book. And in this one, the pilots don't matter to me. And also, I think the Nile, generally speaking, are interesting, but the more you learn about them, the less interesting they become, because it's just a bunch of generic assholes that are bad guys that also aren't really all that important. And Martian Row is interesting, but not so interesting to carry a whole thing. And it's also because we don't know why he is the way he is, what the hell the point of it is, or why he hates the Jedi, right? So it doesn't really make too much sense. I know Phase 2 is supposed to happen before, so we might learn about Martian Row through that, but that's such a stupid way of setting up the story. So I don't know if I'll care too much. What else? Yeah, I think that's generally it. Now, as to why I don't really like the way that the multimedia project is set up, it's because these three major stories, these adult stories, feel more like center points, like the beginning, the center of the story, and then the end of the story. And there's a bunch of stuff missing. And I understand that it's so that you can go and read the other stuff, but I don't care about YA fantasy. I don't like how it's written too much anymore, at least like American stuff. And I'm definitely not gonna read middle grade because that's so boring. like it's not bad. Like it's fine. It's entertaining for like children and stuff. But to me, it feels really boring to read middle grade books. And also, I don't want to read like 50 books to understand this story that I already know based on these three books, right? So I think the story would have been better as 5 different adult novels and then have secondary material, or have the same story in a different way for children and then the same story in a different way for teenagers, instead of having this like crisscrossing system, right? So I don't know, that's just me. I understand that it's not built that way for a reason. I just don't like the reason, which is probably to make the most money possible. And it makes these kind of major moments in the story that I read feel like they're missing stuff. In my opinion, I think Avar Kriss, Stellan Gias, and Elzar Mann should have been introduced in the first novel, and then had all 3 of them doing different things throughout the novels together or separately, but in contact with each other, and that would have been interesting. I just like Avar Kriss as a character. Stellan Gias is kind of annoying, and Elzar Mann's cool, but because he's not a normal Jedi, he's more like Anakin, right? He's more like touchy-feely. He understands people a little bit more. He's kind of a cool guy, right? But he's just pining over Avar Kriss the whole time, and it's just kind of like, okay, I get it, but like, do something, bro. Like, I don't know. So that leads me to this conclusion. I like the first novel. I found the other 2 to be fine, and I don't think I'm going to continue with phase 1 at all. I'm not going to read anything else. And I also don't really think I'm going to continue with phase 2. I'll check out some reviews for the adult novels when they come out. And if I like them, maybe I'll try checking it out. But as of right now, I think I'm done with Star Wars novels for the time being. Honestly, I would really just prefer these to be turned into TV shows. Like, take the whole phase 1 and turn it into an all-ages TV show like the Clone Wars, and just make it so that sometimes we have a stupid little kiddie show, and then sometimes we have like a really important adult show, and just kind of make it go the way it's supposed to go, and have it all chronologically happening instead of having to like juggle it across different shows, right? So maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that has this opinion. Very much doubt it though. So it is what it is. But that's all I have to say about Star Wars, The High Republic. It's another one of these projects that they probably thought was going to be a huge hit, and I think it's not really a miss, but it's not really that great either. It's just kind of getting a hit and getting to first base. It's not a home run by any stretch of the imagination. So that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you thought about my video or about the High Republic in general if you have read it. And thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys later.